Amen. Well, man, I'm excited about tonight. We're going to wrap up our series, finishing up our series, The Vow. How do we get romance right? Specifically, how do you date in such a way and go into engagement in such a way and get married in such a way that your marriage is going to be strong 40, 50 years from now. But tonight, a couple things. So one is after our regular service, after our regular gathering at about 9:35, we're going to do a Q&A. And they're actually going to put a slide up that I want to explain for you to go and ask questions. And so if you have questions about dating, sex, singleness, marriage, and so on and so forth, on your phone, you can pull out your phone even now, go to sli.do, sli.do, and if you go there and then you're going to put the event code, you just write, it's going to pop up immediately, it's going to say event code, you put the vow, and no spaces, the vow, and then you can go and type your question, and if you press send, your question will be there. It's all anonymous, so whatever question you have, feel free to ask it. I'm the only one who knows who sent it. I'm joking, I don't know who sent it. But it is completely anonymous, so feel free to ask whatever is actually on your heart and your mind. And then you can also like questions. So this is why I would love for everyone in the crowd to go and participate, because if you don't want to ask a specific question, you can go and like questions. And when we go into that Q&A session, we are going to answer the most popular ones first, so that way we make sure in our time together, about 45 minutes, give or take, about answering in the Q&A. We'll take answering those questions. We'll answer the most popular ones, the most liked ones first. So other than that, to give us some traction with where we're going now, I'm also excited about what we're doing for, I guess, our first session together this evening. And then for those that want to stick around, you can stick around at 9:35. But to give us some traction, so I've went to quite a few weddings at this point in my life. Because I was a wedding crasher. No, I wasn't. I'm lying. Was not a wedding crasher. But I've been to several weddings, and I've preached quite a few weddings, especially for my age. And then I've also just attended. We just got out of that time in life where all your friends start to get married, because I'm 32 now. And so we just got out of that season. And so one of the things that's probably my most favorite thing about the reception time is, and who here's been to a wedding, by the way? So most of the room, okay, cool. So one of my favorite things, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I think a lot of people see it, but at the reception, the bride and the groom, they dance, and then after their dance and all the dances that they have to kind of start the reception, then they say, all right, if you have been married, all married couples come to the dance floor. Have y'all seen this moment? So all married couples go to the dance floor, and then the DJ takes the mic, and the DJ will say, okay, if you've been married less than 24 hours, go sit down, as everyone's dancing to this romantic slow song about how much love is great. And so like every country song, other than the ones where you lose everything. And so it's kind of true. And so they're dancing to and swaying to the song, and then they'll say, okay, if you've been married less than 5 years, then go sit down. And then they'll say 10. And of course, this is now about 4 or 5 minutes in. And then they'll say, okay, 15. And then they start going by decades, and they say 20. And then they'll go 30. And by this time, it's the dance floor is very bare, and there's only a few people still left dancing. And they're all kind of looking at each other like, man, we're old, but hey, we made it. And so they're rocking back and forth. And then they'll go like 40 years, sometimes 50, 60 years for the last couple that's on the dance floor. And they're swaying back and forth, and they're looking at everyone around them like, wow, like we have a marriage where we're still looking at each other's eyes in love still today. And when I think about that, I think about us, and I think about y'all and myself, and I think, man, this is what we want. We want a marriage like that. Now, we don't know how long. We don't know how long we're going to be on this earth, but the kind of love that's going to stay strong is what we want. The kind of love that would go 50, 60, 70 years even in marriage that stays strong. It's a godly, loving marriage. That's what we're after. Now, we've been talking about how do you get there. Of course, it starts with attraction, then dating, and goes from there, but that's kind of the goal. And so the problem that we have is trying to get there, right? And another problem to kind of show even more of the issue you is many of us in the room, when we think about our own upbringings and we think about our own households that we grew up in, many people, and fewer today, have actually had a great, godly, loving marriage to look at as they grew up with their own parents. And so I actually did a little survey with my leadership, probably, I think it was a couple years ago now, but about 40 people in the room. And I said, hey, raise your hand if you did not have a godly, loving marriage, healthy marriage to look at as you were growing up. And the majority of the room raised their hand. And so because of that, I thought, what if we got some marriages to come up as we close our time out, and y'all got to see kind of marriage in real life, some marriages that we mess up and we're making mistakes like everybody else, but we're going after what it is to live a godly, loving marriage. And so will y'all welcome our panelists, I guess you want to call them that, to the stage. And so we got Trevor, Tori, so they're coming to join us. My wife, Carrie's coming to join us. And then our pastor, Steve, and his wife is coming to join us. And so on the stage, you have Trevor. How long have y'all been married now?
We have been married for about 1.5 years.
So 1.5 years. So we got not quite year 2, so we're going to call it the year 1 marriage. And then we have been married going on in May. We'll be married 10 years. Okay, and so we're kind of in that phase. We have a couple kids at home, never get sleep. And then how long have y'all been married? 107 years. It's fantastic. Lots of wisdom. 35. So we got year 1, year 10, and year 35. And so I thought, man, how cool would it be if we got just some questions that we could all answer on what does marriage in real life really look like as you're trying to pursue the Lord. And so let's begin. Let's begin by just some rapid get to know you questions. So this one's not one I gave y'all, but just tell me where y'all met. And use the mic.
All right, we met, I was a youth minister, I was getting old, and some of the kids in my youth group said, we have got to get this guy married, okay? So 2 of them said, our cousin is coming to town. Do you want to meet our cousin? And I said, well, is she cute? And they said, yeah. And they said, well, we want you to meet her. And so I met her, and that afternoon I was ready to get married.
Sometimes you fall fast. You want to share?
We met in youth group. I'm going to pass out, but it's fine.
When we met, I was actually running from God, and she didn't like me.
Yeah,
That's actually the true story.
Yeah, he was a jerk.
I have no idea what she said, so I'm going to smile and nod.
I said you were a jerk.
Oh, my goodness.
But not anymore.
This is actually a counseling session for. I'm just kidding. No, we actually met here at the church. I moved here about 4 years ago, and we met. We met out in this lobby right here. Travis and Carrie kind of set us up, like they told her about me and me about her. So
am I coming through? All right, sorry.
But yeah, so we met out there. Yeah.
All right. So next question. What was your first date? What was your first date?
Trevor asked me to go to coffee with him, and then like that day he was like, "Do you want to just make it dinner?" So we went to BJ's. That's a good like you rope-a-doped her.
Yeah, let me tell you,
that's
guys,
good.
This is for free. If you're a little nervous about asking to go out to dinner, say, hey, let's just go grab coffee one day, and then the day of, like, actually, let's go to dinner. I'll pick you up. Just change the last minute.
Well, Travis and I had to wait to go on a date for about 6 months because I was only 15 and my mom wouldn't let me go on a date till I was 16.
And apparently I was a jerk. So
for the first several months, we just hung out at my parents' house on the couch and watched TV with my dad. And then we went on a really fancy date to the Melting Pot when we finally got to go on a date.
Yep, it was a great one.
Well, the aunt that fixed us up.
Oh.
You got to turn it on.
Oh,
bam. Good to go.
So the aunt that fixed us up, she had us over for a meal, and so that was actually our first date. So anyway, it was fun. Yes.
Y'all went motorcycle riding. Man, you
was,
also had long hair, didn't you?
Long hair.
Yeah, you did.
Wore a leather jacket.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it whenever you throw something out and you're like, yeah, I was right. Well, no, that's fantastic. All right. So how did you ask her to marry you guys?
So like I said, we met in that lobby. And so I guess it's been about 2 years now. When I knew I was gonna ask her to marry me, I wanted it to be somewhere that meant something to us. I didn't want to just do it somewhere random. And so I actually did it out in the lobby. I had kind of tricked her. I think she knew the day of, but I had like we were out there in the lobby. Yeah, she knew. She didn't know till the day of. I did pretty good. Anyways, we were out in the lobby. We had the lights were off, and I had all of her family and some of my family come in town, some of our best friends, to surprise her. And I made like a trail of candle lights, and she came in, and I asked her to marry me right out there where we met. So
For
she
me,
said no.
for me, I said, "Will you marry me?" And she said yes. Actually, she nodded. She nodded. But I took her back to the Melting Pot where I took her on our first date, fondue restaurant. And I didn't talk at all in the whole entire conversation.
It was so awkward. I thought he was going to break up with me.
She was asking me questions. And I was just staring at her like, trying to figure out when I was supposed to ask her. And at the very end, I finally got down on knee and I said, "Hey, the only thing I said the whole entire dinner was, will you close your eyes?" And I got out and I got on one knee and then I said, "Will you open your eyes?" and then I said, "Will you marry me?" And she never said yes. She actually just nodded her head. So I put that in the W column, and here we are 10 years later. So
11, actually.
Yeah.
She was living with her grandparents, going to school at Tech, and so I was youth minister at Post. And so we would come out to see her, and we were there once, I think it was a Sunday night, and we had been talking about marriage anyway because she knew the first day I saw her I wanted to marry her, and it took a long time for her because she wasn't getting a very good deal, but I was getting a really good deal. And so anyway, so we've been talking about it some, and so we were sitting on her grandmother's couch and talking about marriage, and she said, "I will, but you're going to have to get on your knees, at least." So I got on my knees. I was happy to do it and ask her, and I don't know why she said yes, but she did, so.
Awesome.
Quite that demanding of a way.
So now by raise of hand or point of finger, depending on whether it's you or not, a couple of fast questions here. So who is more likely to make a joke at the improper time, by raise of hand or point of finger? For sure. So who steals the covers? Yeah. And who snores the loudest? Dang it.
We
Okay.
don't snore because we're young. So
That's good. That's good. We'll talk later. Anyway, so jumping in with both feet here. So one of our key questions for the night. So what is something unexpected that happens in marriage?
For me, it's very simple, but you start to like things that maybe you didn't like before. And just a small example, I actually hated cats before I ever met Tori. Despised them. I didn't understand people that liked cats, and now we have two, and I love cats. And if there was a stray cat outside right now, and you told me, I would leave and go out there and pet it. So I used to hate cats, and now I like them. So
It's weird. I gotta stop. All right.
So when Travis and I got married, I was only 19. And so everyone who met me said, "Why are you getting married? It's going to be so hard. I don't understand." And so I actually was really surprised by how great it was, because everyone told me it was going to be really hard and terrible. Not that there aren't hard things in marriage, but when you're 19, people always tell you how you're making a mistake, even if you're not. Oh, and I also expected that a grown man would be able to get his dirty clothes in the hamper, but still can't.
Unexpected. I always thought the term "sleep like a baby" was a good thing until I had babies. And so they don't sleep. So whenever someone's like, "Oh man, I slept like a baby," that means you didn't sleep at all. Like, I don't understand the phrase. And also, you sleep on 5 inches of bed, because my daughters like to roll over on my back. And so it's a tough battle every night. So.
And they start in their bed, and then you wake up and they're both in your bed every time.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was unreal expectations on him, because I did come from a family that was very emotional. And, my parents would get up in the morning, they would tell me they loved me, and we'd go to bed at night, and they would tell me they loved me. We get married. He tells me he loves me on our wedding day. But after that, he's thinking, if it changes, I'll let you know. So anyway, so I didn't hear it every day. And that was kind of hard for me. So that was kind of an expectation that I put on him. But and just the romantic part of it. I'm thinking, you watch romantic movies and you read romantic novels and you're thinking, okay, our marriage should be like that. And that is just totally unreal and it's not real life. And so I kind of had to get through that, those expectations. So anyway.
Yeah, that's good.
Tori, did you want to share?
So for me, I thought that like when we got married, we'd be together 24/7 and I would for sure get annoyed from Trevor. But I don't know, I've come to find out that you just really don't get as much time together as you think. So we have like different work schedules and then I'm traveling for work. And so for us, we really have to like plan it out and make sure that that's a priority, that we're spending quality time together because it's super important.
Yeah, and we don't even have kids yet. And so I imagine it's much more difficult when you have kids to prioritize that time together. So.
Yeah. The next question is, how do you keep Jesus at the center of your marriage? And Colossians 1:17, it says, he being Jesus, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So whatever you put Jesus at the center of in your life, whether it be romance or not, every area of your life, what you put Jesus at the center of is going to be held together. And so, how do you keep Jesus at the center of your marriages?
I would say, so like I love Trevor, but you really have to love God first before your spouse. And I feel like for us, we really make sure that we keep each other accountable, that we're spending time in the Word, that we're praying together, that we're praying for each other.
Yeah, I think what I am, and I'm still learning, obviously, again, we've only been married for a year and a half, but is that you really have to be intentional with each other about keeping each other accountable spiritually. Like I had to be intentional to actually go and ask her, hey, like what have you been praying about lately? Or hey, what have you been reading lately? Or go and share with her what I've been reading. And so if you don't make an effort to be intentional, then neither one of you will ever ask about those kind of things. And then before you know it, you've been married for 5 years and you've never had a conversation about your faith with your spouse, which is not what it looks like to keep Jesus at the center of your marriage. So,
And I think if you're not keeping Jesus at the center of your life when you're single, then you aren't going to be able to keep him at the center of your marriage. And so right now, you should be praying, reading your Bible, being involved in church, community group, talking about your faith, and then that's going to spill over into your marriage later. And so Travis asks me regularly how I am in my faith, what my walk looks like, and we do a family devotional with our kids, which they are 5 and 1, so it's not a very long devotional, or sometimes we can't keep their attention. Anyways, but just always trying to make our walk with Jesus something that we talk about regularly. And when you talk about it, then it's more natural to keep him at the center.
Yeah, you want to share?
Go ahead.
I think it's very important that if you're going to have Jesus the center of your marriage, Jesus got to be the center of your life. And so we can't both just go live our own lives and do whatever we want to do and then come back and think Jesus is going to be the center of our marriage. So both of us every day, when I'm leaving for work, I see her sitting down on the couch, opening her Bible, reading, praying. I do that too. And then because both of us are trying to follow Jesus Christ, then that brings us closer together. And Jesus, because he's the center of our individual lives, he becomes the center of our home life as well.
And so you become not just a hearer of the word, but also a doer of the word. And you practice that obedience with him. And when you do that, it's just going to be a natural overflow into your marriage. It's going to be better because you're learning things and you're doing things that God has asked you to do, and you're learning that obedience. And it's just going to overflow into your marriage and make it a better marriage.
Yeah, you were saying a while ago that, that neither one of you is going to be number one. Jesus is going to be number one. And that's what we determined before we ever got married. And we said that to each other, that you're not first place in my life. Jesus is. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, but when that's really true, then you're going to have a better marriage, because when you listen to what Jesus is talking to you about, hey, you were too harsh with your spouse, you said this, you shouldn't have done that, you're being too selfish, then your marriage is going to be better. So,
yeah, and for me, it just means so much when Carrie says, "Can I pray for you?" If she sees I'm struggling, going through something, and this isn't rocket science stuff, but it's shocking to me how few couples pray together. And I think many of us in the room have heard the adage, pray together, stay together, right? And I think there's a lot of truth and a lot of merit to that. I would just add this, because I know that this is about marriage, which is the ultimate goal of dating. But what about when you're dating? Because I know that that's an honest question. The pray together, stay together thing, that's for marriage specifically. Now, of course, I think that there's principles that apply there to dating. But in dating, what does it look like to keep Jesus at the center? I think worshiping together and or talking about God together, because I know that there's distance in relationships across the room as well. And then if you have a Christian community, people that are believers that are surrounding you, man, I think you're setting yourself up for success. So the next question is what does compromise look like in your marriage? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, it says, I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk, this is Paul speaking to the church, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love. And that highlight would be bearing with one another. That is required, and compromise is part of that. And so what does compromise look like in our marriages here?
I know for us, for me, compromise is a lot easier when the two people are both willing to be very sacrificial. Meaning, like, if I am willing to sacrifice for her and she's willing to sacrifice for me, then when a time comes up where we need to compromise, it's a lot easier because we both have a sacrificial love for each other. And part of what that looks like for us is using a lot of we language. Meaning, like, when the Bible says that when a husband and wife come together, they become one flesh. And so for us, it's like we are a team. Literally, like God says, like, hey, you are one. It's no longer just me. It's no longer just Tori. And so when we are in a situation or when we're thinking about how to handle a situation, I don't think, man, what am I going to do? I think about, okay, what are we going to do? And then also alongside that, like, what can I do for her in this situation, and vice versa? So for me, for us, again, trying to use the we language, for us, I think that it's sacrificing first oftentimes makes the compromise a lot easier.
I think when you consider each other in every decision, whether big or small, then the compromise is going to come naturally or more naturally. So you consider each other in a small decision like, well, what should we eat for dinner? And then you consider each other easier in the bigger decisions, like, should we move, or should I take this job, or those types of things. The compromise is going to come more naturally whenever you've made a habit of considering the other person and how they're going to feel.
So, like, right now, so Disney Plus is pretty awesome, by the way, but Disney Plus, she really liked the new High School Musical show. I know. And I'm not like crazy. I'm not like crazy about it. But I was like, cool, I'll watch High School Musical and then you watch Mandalorian with me. Okay? Any Mandalorian people in here? Hey, this is the way.
I still don't know.
And so.
Still don't know what happened. Fell asleep.
But that's a small little compromise. That's what compromise really looks like in our marriage. It's small little things. And then, like, I think it's true. The bigger things, it's natural to compromise when you compromise just daily life. So. What y'all say?
Well, we are polar opposites in every aspect of our lives. And we're both Christians. That's about the only thing we have in common. He likes the mountains, I like the beach. He likes sweet things, I like salty, and we could go on. And so because we're so money, he's very tight with money, I'm not. Anyway, so we have, our marriage is, it's all about compromise. And for us, we have learned how to compromise. If we didn't learn how to compromise, we wouldn't be here today. So one of the biggest places that we have to compromise in is money, because I do like to spend money and he likes to save it all. And so that's always kind of been a challenge for years, but we kind of figured it out now. But
can you share about the shirt thing? That's so funny.
Okay. So we hadn't been married very long, and back then, when we first got married 30 years ago, we'd have revivals, and they would be all week long. And so you'd have a lunch meeting and then a night meeting, and I was coming out of college. I didn't have very many clothes, and so I went to Target one day and they actually had Target back then, but anyway, so went to Target, got a little sweater to make my outfits kind of last longer, and he said, you didn't need that. Why did you get, a sweater? I said, it's revival week. I have a lot of clothes I'm having to wear. And he said, you know what? You could have worn one of my shirts in my closet, put a belt on it, you're good. I'm going, it's going to be a long marriage.
Pastor Steve shirts with the belt on it? Hey, that's a good comeback.
Anyway, so I learned then, okay, we're going to have to figure this thing out. And pretty much because he is better with financial things, I listen to him, especially with big purchases. And so for him, he'd like to buy the cheapest thing. For me, I want to buy, maybe the nicer thing. And so we usually compromise and say, okay, we're going to buy kind of a middle road refrigerator, appliance, or whatever. And then he kind of lets me do the smaller things without too much question. So we've managed. We're still here. But it has taken a lot of compromise.
And you have to get to the place where you say, I do not always have to have my way. You just have to get there. If you've always got to have your way, your marriage is just not going to work. So, got to learn that.
Yeah, and that's true. Of course, that absolutely applies now in dating. It starts in dating, I would say. I would say if you're dating someone hoping that they get there later when you get married, problems. So it needs to start now working towards that. The next question is how does forgiveness look in your marriage? How does forgiveness look in your marriage?
For me, I feel like I forgive pretty easily, but also it's just looking at myself and recognizing that I'm not perfect, and so I can't hold Trevor to that same standard. And then I think of Psalm 103:12, which says, as far as the east is from the west, so far he has removed our transgressions from us. And so thinking about the forgiveness that God gives to us, it makes it a lot easier to forgive others, for me.
Yeah, for me, I think that there are certain people in your life where it's easier to forgive certain people in your life versus others. And particularly in a marriage, if we're in conflict, whether I did something wrong or vice versa, I remind myself of who this person is to me. Like, this is my wife, or for girls, like this is my husband. I love this person more than any other person. And so I desperately, like, I always want to forgive her, or I always want her forgiveness. And so it's much easier to forgive when you actually want to forgive. And so I always want that with her. And I remind myself, like, this is my wife. Like, I don't want to hold on to anything against her, because that seeps into your marriage, and that can cause long-term damage. And then also always be the one to seek forgiveness. So if you mess up, even if they messed up too, always initiate, like, almost like both of you be racing to forgive each other. Like, don't make them come to you. Especially if you messed up, go to them and seek their forgiveness. Don't wait for them to come to you and ask you to apologize. So be willing to go and seek that forgiveness if you wrong your husband or wife.
I think when you marry someone who strives to love you the way that Christ loves the church, that we have to remember that they're going to fail. But if you are married to someone who consistently loves and serves you, then it's easier to forgive them when they inconsistently fail. And so, like, Travis usually is looking out for my good, and he's doing what's right, and he's loving me well. And so on the times when he does fail me, I know his heart, and I know his love for me, I know his love for the Lord, and it makes that forgiveness come easier. And so I think when you marry someone who is loving you the way that God calls them to, that forgiveness is so much easier. And then when I do have to forgive, you have to let it go, not just forgive and be like, oh, well, I'm just not mad anymore. But we're supposed to keep no record of wrong, is what the Bible says. And so let it go completely and start fresh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the Bible says in Ephesians 4:26, do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. And so when we first got married, we made that kind of a commitment to each other. If we have to stay up all night long working through some of this stuff, that's what we're going to need to do. And we did. We did that a lot. And I remember one night, we also said that we would not sleep in separate beds if we were mad at each other. So one night, I was mad at him, and obviously we didn't work through whatever we were working through. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to sleep in a different bed. And so I go to another bedroom, and I'm laying there, and I hear him coming in there, and I was like, I am mad at you, and I don't want to sleep in the same bed as you. And he's like, we said that we were not going to sleep in separate rooms. It's like, well, we are going to sleep in separate rooms tonight. So I went to another bedroom. We had a third bedroom, so I went to that one, and here he comes, and I go, ah. So then I get up and I go to our bedroom, and he follows me. And secretly inside, I was kind of glad he was fighting for our marriage. Kind of, not that we were fixing to get a divorce or something, but just that he was willing to make that extra effort to do that. So anyway, but yes, just you have to get past those hard times and be willing to forgive, and don't let the sun go down in your anger. Work through stuff and open up and communicate with each other.
If you do not forgive, you will not make it. You will get bitter, you'll get angry, you'll hate each other, and you have to learn to forgive. Everybody makes mistakes. I can't even remember how many mistakes. I mean, I can't count that high. But you're going to make mistakes, and so you're going to have to forgive, and you're going to have to get forgiveness. If you do not, it's not going to work.
When we first got married, and even like maybe in the last few years still, we would get into, I'll call it a tiff. I don't know why that's the word, because I don't ever use that word, but we'll get into an argument, and I'll be talking, and I'll just be calmly sharing my side, and then she will say, "Why are you yelling at me?" And I'm like, "I'm not yelling at you." And so she thinks I'm yelling. I don't think I'm yelling. And I had to learn that, hey, I need to bring my voice down to a level where she no longer thinks that I'm yelling. It doesn't matter how I feel at the moment. It matters how she feels like I'm coming across. And this was when we were dating, by the way. I learned that lesson starting then.
Yeah, he also says I'm too quiet, so sometimes I have to bring my
Yes,
volume up.
I say that she talks at a frequency that only mice can hear. And so that's a statement I think I say weekly.
He also is just deaf. So.
The most deaf. All right, anyway. Terrible. That's bad. All right. When it comes to forgiveness, I love the verses that y'all mentioned, but one more in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, it says, "Be kind to one another." And like Carrie said, when kindness is the habit, forgiveness tends to come a little bit more easy in a relationship, whether it be friendship, dating, or marriage. Obviously, we're talking about marriage here, but then it says, "Be tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you." Like, whenever we think things like, "Oh, you don't deserve it," "Oh, you really hurt me." Like, listen, I did not deserve the forgiveness of Jesus that he gave me. And it really did hurt him on the cross, but he did it anyway because that's what his love went to, the lengths that his love went to save me. And when you have the forgiveness of Jesus in your life, it really frees you to forgive anybody of anything. And I know that's a massive statement. I meet with you guys, and I know what you guys have been through. And so I'm telling you, and so with that, this is a little bit heavier of a statement, but hey, work through the parent wound now, because it will come with you into your marriage. Work through that parent wound. And also, just since in dating, because I'm talking in marriage, we're locked in this thing. Like we're here till death do us part. And so in dating, you're not there yet. And so in dating, just want to say a couple things. If he hits you, there's a simple rule: one strike, he's out. And then call some people that are barely saved and let us go talk to him. Okay? And if she hits you, same thing, but usually it's the guy that hits the girl. One strike. Do not go back to a guy that's going to physically hurt you. And you can forgive him from afar. And then I would say if she or he cheats on you, you should probably break up. And I know that might sound insensitive, but most likely you should probably break up and, again, forgive from afar. And if y'all do get to be back together, it needs to be after a period of time where you show that, where that person shows that there actually is change. You set yourself up for a lot of pain in your life if you don't make that step. And then I would say one more thing in dating is don't brush over the major issues because you're committed to working it out. Because you're so infatuated, you're already emotionally connected, and so you decide not to go into some of the flaws you see in those conversations because they're hard. So you'd rather not have them. I would say have the hard conversations, not 35 minutes into your first coffee date. Be like, "So, like, what's your deepest problem?" So, again, that's weird. Like, that's not going to land you married, probably. So I would give those little pieces of advice. Would anybody add anything on dating? Because I know that we're speaking about our marriages, but I want you guys to have some practical things for even now in dating.
Yeah, I think when you talk about, I think that when you're dating, if somebody, like he said, a couple of very serious issues, like if he or she hits you or if they cheat on you, you want to forgive that person. You want to seek the Lord and be able to forgive that person. But just understand that if that happens in dating, if that person is willing to do that while you're dating, and you think about the amount of pain that causes when you're dating, do you want to even think about the pain that could cause when you're married to somebody and they betray you in that way? And so just consider that when you're dating, that you are building a foundation for your marriage. I said that a couple weeks ago while I was preaching, but when you're dating, you are building that foundation, and that person, the way that they are while you're dating is likely going to carry over into your marriage. And so if they're abusive while you're dating, I promise you, Jesus can change their life, but he doesn't have to change it while you're dating them. You can break up with that person and then Jesus can change their life. But if they're abusive while you're dating, they're going to be abusive when you're married.
And that
so,
includes emotional
yeah,
abuse as
verbal,
well.
emotional.
So, hey, let's jump down one question here and go ahead and jump to what has it looked like for you to love each other in sickness and in health? And we asked if Pastor Steve and Diane kind of would share a little bit of their journey and what that has looked like. What does it look like to love in sickness and in health?
We got married, and we made this vow to each other. I remember very specifically us making it: better, worse, sickness, health, richer, poorer, and we've said that, and we really meant it. So we were married about 10 years. We had just had our third child, and Diane started feeling bad. And, well, actually, her health had never been all that great in our marriage, but she got feeling worse and worse, and we said, we need to go to the doctor. So we went to the doctor on Monday. He said, you need to come back tomorrow. We need to run some more tests. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, they come in, and he says, your wife's got multiple sclerosis. Now, I didn't know what that was, and so I thought she was about to die. And we were both in the hospital bed just crying because we thought she was about to die. And so we got out and figured out, no, she's not going to die. It's going to affect her life, but she's not going to die from it. And so for 25 years, we've dealt with that, and it's made a lot of difference in our world. But one of the things and I'll get emotional talking about this, because I didn't always tell her, I love you, I love you, I love you every day. I was trying to show her, but I didn't tell her every day. And so after she got MS and she saw, I'm not leaving. I'm going to love you. You're sick. You're healthy. I'm going to love you. And she said once to me after that, she said, I always thought you loved me, but now I know you love me because you're not running off. And so to us, that means a whole lot. And when you take those vows, you say them before God. God hears those vows. God hears what I'm promising her. And so it's just incredibly important. And that's part of my worship to God, part of my living out the Christian life, is that I love my wife, whether she is sick. And she's still beautiful and still wonderful, but she's got a serious illness. But we still love each other and made it work.
So on your end, what has that been like?
Just the receiving end of that is an incredible thing. Just to have that assurance that he's not going to run off, and just showing that Christ-like love to me is just, and I needed that. Yeah. I needed that. So that's, God has worked good out of bad, and so that's been a beautiful thing.
I look up to Pastor Steve as a mentor for me, and one of the things that you said that just spoke volumes that, I've went back to and I've thought about many times is whenever you said that whenever y'all found out about that and your first reaction, you actually sold your house to make sure you could take care of her needs financially. And
what happened on that was that she had to have a certain medicine, and we had just moved to a new town. We got this really nice house. We had got it. These people gave us a great deal on this house. And then we got that she needed a certain kind of medicine, but the insurance company said they were not going to pay for it. And so I said, well, we're going to get that medicine. And you rub off on each other in marriage too. But what we said was, if we move into a trailer house, we're selling this house, we're moving into the cheapest house we can get, and we're going to get your medicine. And so so we sold our house. And while we were in the process of selling our house, the insurance company, we'd already signed the papers. The insurance company sends us a piece of mail and said, oh, we've decided we're going to pay for your wife's insurance right after, her medicine. So right after we did that. But anyway, we were going to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's just I think that's a picture of what sacrificial love is to me. And so moving to a little, I guess, spicing things up a little bit here. How do you keep the fire of romance going? How do you keep the fire going? Anybody want to start with that one?
Well, I'm gonna start tame. So my pastor the church I grew up in, he said something one time. He's preaching on a Sunday morning, and I was pretty young, but it stuck with me. He said about his wife. He said I will date my wife for the rest of my life. Meaning when you get married, you don't stop pursuing your husband or wife. You don't stop seeking to know them more. You don't stop seeking to try to do little things to impress them. And so he said, I will date my wife the rest of my life. And I mean, that stuck with me because like because I married Tori, like we're not done pursuing each other and then also obviously pursuing Christ together, but I want to date her. I want to do things to impress her, to things to make her smile. Like I never want to let go of that. But all that aside, honestly, just have a lot of sex. It is a great way to keep the romance going. God created sex within marriage to be an amazing thing. So that's a great way to keep the romance going. But practically, Travis might be able to expand on that, about how real that is.
All right. Here's the thing. So it's true. God did create our sexuality, and whenever you get married, that is something that is a gift from God. It was God's idea. And so with that said, I agree with what Trevor said, but you got to know this. If you, what the studies show, if you are on the high end for when you get married, someone that has sex a lot, and they do studies on this stuff, then you're going to be having, if you have sex often in marriage, you're going to be having sex 0.6% of your married life. 0.6. I know y'all are like, wait a second, that isn't all that it is? 99.4% will be spent doing other things. And so that's so key to understand. And I'm not saying, again, I don't want to downgrade that. Yeah, it's a gift from God to be enjoyed within the context of marriage, but that's 0.6%. That stat kind of made me think like, my goodness, that's really not a lot.
all the guys are disappointed.
And also, again, we don't have kids, so I know that drops off when you have kids quite a bit. But I'm just going to tell you guys this. If I remember a young married
Not
couple
always.
that I knew. Yeah, not always. Hey, yeah, I'm not trying to.
Come on.
I'll give credit where
I'm
credit's
gonna
due,
die.
I
That's all I'm
guess.
saying. I'm not saying anything else.
But
If I don't show up next week, no, I'm fired. Just know that I'm looking for something.
I was debating whether or not to say that, and Travis gave me the green light, so y'all can blame him for that. But no, I knew a young married couple, and I remember them bragging about how often they had sex, and now actually being married, I'm like, man, they were definitely lying because anyways, it's just know that is not what
let's not go
marriage
into
is all
details.
that it's a great thing to keep the romance going, but it is an extremely small percentage of your marriage.
And I would say what she views as sexy has changed since we've gotten married. Like she loves to come in and to see me like playing with our daughters and like trying to be a good dad. Like she loves seeing me try to doing the best I can to be a good dad. She loves actually at about 11 at night. I feel like she'll go, my shoulders are tight and I'm exhausted, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like you would think like in the movies, it's always like, yeah, baby, let me massage you. No, I'm like, do what you really need a massage.
He's like,
but
can I just pay somebody to do that?
I start sweating like 2 minutes in. I'm like, is it good yet? Okay. But she loves that. Like that's something that she really enjoys. And then like, if I'm really trying to set things up romantically, then I'm going to like help with the dishes or something crazy like that. So anyway.
You go.
So 35 years in, what does that look like?
Well, I'll tell you a joke. So there was this young couple, and this guy was about to get married, okay? And so he's thinking, man, I'm really so looking forward to this. You know, I've been saving myself like Tim Tebow, but now we're getting married, and and so now we can do whatever we want to do, and so, but he's worried about it because he thought, like this. He thought, golly, I hate for the whole thing to play out. And so he asked this guy that was 65, he said, when does that stop being really good? And the guy that was my age said, I don't know. It's sometime after this. I'm really not sure what age it is. So I think romance is a good thing. And you call it
Touché.
romance. Is that what you call it?
I'll call it romance.
Okay. Let me tell you something.
Spicy
about,
romance.
Honestly.
Cayenne romance. Pepper.
I want to tell you something honestly about romance. Romance is fantastic. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about romance.
Why are you
Okay?
pointing at me?
You did that to yourself, Trevor.
He can be fired. But romance is more like what my wife wants. She wants me to buy her flowers. She wants me to treat her nice and take her out to a movie. And I don't do enough of that. But that's romance. But couple of things in marriage, romance and commitment. And both of them are important. The romance is very important to her, but commitment's also important. And romance is sort of like when you come here on a Sunday night and you're singing these songs and you're very emotional, and that's kind of a romance with God, and that is a wonderful thing. But really what's important is your commitment on Monday morning and on Saturday night. That's really what's important. How do you live for Jesus? Here, you get tears in your eyes, you lift up your hands, you worship, and I am so excited to see it. It thrills my heart to see this college crowd tonight. It really does. But this is the romance of it, and it's great. But you also have got to have that commitment that I'm living for Jesus, whether people are watching, whether they're not. I'm going to live for him. And so with us, there is commitment because our health is not good all the time. But also, I told her just a while ago, Tuesday night, we're going to go watch that movie that we've been talking about. So need a little bit of that too.
No. Want to share?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, if I had to choose between commitment and romance, I'm going to choose commitment, but every girl needs her some romance. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So, that just goes a long way in marriage,
Yeah.
romance.
Yeah, never cut out all the mushy stuff. It's good if you gross your kids out a little bit.
Don't want
Make
to send
'em
them to
jealous.
counseling,
Yeah.
but you also.
You want to kind of make them, ew, y'all are so gross. Why do you always kiss each other?
Yeah.
Cassie always tries to get in on it.
One thing, man, she does. No, every time I hug Carrie, she's like, Dad, I'm like, you're literally ruining everything right now. Anyway, I love her. She's amazing, just not in those moments. So, hey, but how awesome would it be? What if truly, because I know this is crazy to say, hey, what if you saved yourself until you were with your spouse the day that you got married from this day forward? Like, I know that sounds crazy in our world today, but I'm telling you that when you have commitment, and then there's in Genesis it says they were naked and they were unashamed and they were before each other, Adam and Eve, and that was an amazing moment. And I'm telling you that we're in a broken world, but you get a little bit of that whenever you've saved yourself, and then you go, hey, I'm not comparing you to anybody. You're not comparing me to anybody. It's just us. You are my standard of beauty, and I am yours. And then y'all have this amazing marriage and also amazing sex life is going to be a great possibility at that point. So, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just to kind of, cap that off. Truthfully, kind of along the lines of what Steve was saying, romance, at the end of the day, I would say that romance with your marriage partner is, honestly, it's useless at the end of the day if there's no commitment and no Jesus in the marriage. It really, there's a lot of marriages out there that aren't following Jesus, and I'm sure they have a great romance, but it's useless. If you want that romance to matter and to last, it's commitment, and it's Jesus that will cause that to happen.
So let's rapid fire these last couple of questions here. When I preach a wedding, I usually say that it's actually the small things in a marriage that end up making the greatest impact. And so it's not this big grand act. And like I think many of us have seen Bachelor here in the room with a lot of Bachelor Nation people. It's all the grand act. It's all grand act, but it's only got 11% success rate out of all the seasons. So it's not working. And so the grand act doesn't translate into a strong marriage. And so doing something big and over the top, like, hey, that's cool, that's great. You can be very really great wit with what you decide to do and really surprise somebody, but that's not going to translate into a strong marriage. It's all the small things. And so just a couple of small things in y'all's marriage that have made a big impact.
I know for me, something simple is just, it may not always be like this, but just having a hobby or something that you enjoy doing together. And that just gives you something to talk about together that you both enjoy, that you both do on a regular basis. So just having a hobby in common can go a long way. Just have something that you can do that you enjoy together.
I would say recognizing and acknowledging each other. So when I do the dishes, Trevor's like, thank you. Or when I come home from work, he's like, hey, how was your day? Instead of me just walking in and him not saying anything, I think that recognizing and just acknowledging each other is really a big part of marriage.
Travis knows the way to my heart is candy and caffeine. So he, will bring me home Dr. Pepper or candy, preferably chocolate.
If you're ever really sad, just throw chocolate at you.
Yes. And something
Kept
that
that
he really loves is encouragement and just like sitting and spending quality time together. And so I write him a lot of notes. And we spend a lot of time watching TV together after, well, not a lot of time because our kids stay up too late. But after our kids go to bed, just spending time, just the two of us.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you can do is discover your spouse's love language. Gary Chapman has a book called The 5 Languages of Love, and it talks about how you can help your spouse and know your love for them. And so for me, my love language is words of affirmation and quality time. And so since he knows that about me, we play games together, we lay by the fire or whatever, but we try to do things like that to try to just let each other know that we love each other. For him, he needs me to give him words of affirmation and quality time. I would say the two big things. And so if I'm doing those things, then I know that I'm loving him in the most effective way, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and just the time. You got to make time. Everybody's busy. I'm a workaholic. I'm busy, and you got to make time. And so I try to go home every time I possibly can. Try to go home for lunch, and we'll have lunch together, just for a little while. And then if I have a night off or I'm not doing something, we build a fire in the fireplace and play some card games or something. Just being together, just talking, just spending time.
Like spicy, something like that. All right. Let's end with this question. So we'll go ahead and go to the last question. It's what is a piece of advice that you want to give college students about romance, dating, marriage, singleness? If you were going to give one piece of advice, what would you say?
I wrote down to be okay in your times of singleness, which I feel like we hear that a lot, but I really think that it's super important. For me, like when I was single in college, like most of the 3 years that I was there, I learned to lean and like trust in the Lord instead of learning to trust in a person, like in my boyfriend or whatever. So I just think that that's important to learn to rely on God and not somebody else before you start dating and get married.
Yeah, and for me, there's I guess one thing I could say is do not settle. Like when you're dating and you're looking for someone to marry, don't settle for anything less than what we've been talking about these last 3 or 4 weeks and what we've been talking about tonight. Realistically, like the person that you marry, they're not going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. But you are likely going to spend, if you're blessed with a healthy life, you're going to spend 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years with this person. Don't settle for that partner in life. Like, don't look at everything we've been talking about these last 3 weeks and go, you know what? I mean, all that's great, but this person will do for now. Like, no, it's you don't want to settle for your marriage partner. You want to seek someone that exemplifies the things that we've been talking about.
I think for me, I would want to tell you guys that our culture puts a lot of emphasis on a relationship that is meant to make you happy, but God says that our marriages are meant to make us holy, to make us more like Him. And there's going to be days where you're happy, and there's going to be days when you're sad, days when you're angry, days when you're confused. And happiness is a feeling and not an end goal, but holiness is a goal, and that there's joy whenever you do that. So just knowing that it's not about the happily ever after, but about the holiness that comes through marriage.
And I would say just do not listen to what the world has to say about marriage and dating. They are so confused on what marriage is and what dating should look like. The world says to live together, try it out. You're just going to mess yourselves up if you do things the way the world tells you to do it instead of what Christ tells you to do. So I would just really strongly encourage you to listen to what Travis is talking about when he's talking about marriage, and you read the Bible and you find for yourself what Christ says, what marriage looks like. And Christ created us. He knows the best way to do it. And so listen to what he has to say.
And everybody is looking for a person to make them happy. And Carrie was mentioning that, everybody's looking for this person. Well, you've got to learn to walk with Christ and let him fill up your life and let him cause you to be at peace. You be the person before you try to find the person. And so you work on being the best person and trust God to bring that other person. I was 28 before we met. I'm a lot older than my wife, and I was 28, and I was thinking, maybe I'm never going to get married, but I'm still going to live for the Lord, and I'm going to serve him. And then God brings the person that I'm supposed to marry into my life. I was trying to be the person, and then God brought the person. Okay?
Awesome. Well, hey, can we thank them for being with us tonight? You guys can go ahead and have a seat. Go ahead and have a seat. what I would say, the last, I guess, piece of advice as we finish up this series, and we're about to go into a Q&A session after we have a break time for about 10 minutes here. But, and as the band's coming up, is something that God's been teaching me in other areas of my life is don't run ahead of God, walk with him. And if we can learn to not run ahead of God, because a lot of times we go, God, I want this and I want that and I want that. And we're kind of like, okay, see you later, Jesus. I'm going after those things. And what happens is I find myself in ditches in my life whenever I do that. I find myself in a place I don't want to be. But whenever I go at a pace where I say, Jesus, I just want to walk with you today. And I want to walk with you with my life. And I do that, I find that I'm exactly where I need to be. I find that I arrive at the destination that he wants me to be at. And it's a lot healthier place. So I would say, man, don't run ahead of God. Walk with him. And as we come to a close, one of the things we've been saying is that the fulfillment of love, the love that you're longing for, is satisfied in Jesus. And that's not just something catchy that we're trying to say, but it's actually true. And I know that's a struggle. I was talking with a guy this week that he said, man, it's been really good. He's enjoyed the series, but he's still sad being single. And I told him, man, here's the truth. I think sometimes we know that Jesus is enough. We've heard and had that hammered into our heads, but we have still not given our heart over to it. That we still haven't allowed our heart to say, okay, Jesus, I believe you're enough. I believe you're enough. So why aren't you enough then? He says, I got to be enough for you now. It's not going to just believe, but I've got to be that for you. And we had that conversation, and I'm telling you guys, and I've said this several times, but to look for love and run from God is insanity. That's a quote that I've shared here. And Jesus is the love that you're searching for. Don't run from him. And then I had a conversation with the girl who she was having boy problems in. To quote her, she said, I feel invaluable. I feel like I'm not valued. Man, realize whose you are. If you are a believer in Christ, realize whose you are, that God created you. He calls you his own. I was watching The Bachelor with Carrie, actually, this week, and I was doing something on my phone, and Carrie said this statement. She goes, man, she needs Jesus. And it was a girl that had just gotten voted off. And I said, well, what'd she say? And she said, well, that girl just said, I just want someone to love me unconditionally and be my rock. That's Jesus' fulfillment right there. Jesus is the only thing that can fulfill that statement. Unconditional love and the rock. It's Jesus, man. And so will you come to him? He loves you unconditionally. He's the rock that you can build your life on. Let's pray. God, I pray that we would build our lives on you. And I pray that this was a beneficial series for all of us in the room. And if you're here and you're struggling, you want to talk with someone, or if you have prayer requests, there's a prayer table where you can write down prayers that you have. But if you want to talk with someone, there's a prayer team at the back with glow sticks on, ready to talk with you. But hey, let's have a time where we just respond to Christ in worship at this moment.
Would you stand and worship with us?